Hey yo guys, how are you doing? Last year we looked at the best horror games on PlayStation 3, but this Halloween we are going to take a closer look at the hidden horror gems on PS4. And since I'm not a fan of sneaking and hiding gameplay, for this list I've prepared a good mix of survival horror gems, some light-hearted spooks in between, and a ton of horror-themed action games that pack a punch. So if an evil goon is trying to sneak up on us, we come prepared with a double action. And with that said, grab yourself some pizza and a coffee, kick back and make yourself comfortable, and let's get the kick out of gaming. As always, before we get started, we check out some recommendations from you guys. Longtime dojo member Lester Bronson recommended The Forest. I first played it when it was out in early access, and back then I had an absolute blast with it. Going straight from the Bioshock opening to an island full of cannibals and into full survival and crafting mode was a fun co-op experience. And our second recommendation is for Days Gone, an open world zombie game I still haven't gotten around to play. But the game got a ton of patches and improvements, and you guys keep recommending it, so I can't wait to try it out sometime soon. And now, let's kick off this list by fighting off hordes of otherworldly creatures in Lovecraft's Untold stories. The world is overrun by Lovecraftian beings, but instead of hiding in the closet and going insane, we gear up and send those Cthulhu worshipping goons straight to their doom. And don't let the simple 2D sprite art fool you, this game offers a great challenge. You have to have fast reflexes and manage your inventory efficiently to stand a chance against these creatures' traps and curses that stand between us and the great old ones. The narrative and characters are pretty compelling, and you don't have to be part of the cult following for Lovecraft stories to get the kick out of this game, but it certainly helps. And there are some great nods and Easter eggs to the lesser known stories of Lovecraft as well in this game. And next up we have a game named after the music of Eric Zahn, Song of Horror. Another phenomenal Lovecraftian horror experience and one of the few survival horror games on this list. In Song of Horror we can play as multiple characters, each with their own unique abilities, and throughout a 5-episode journey we are facing off against the unstoppable presence that haunts us at every corner and behind every door, so headphones are mandatory for our playthrough. The gameplay is similar to survival horror classics with fixed camera angles and intricate puzzles. Added to that is the unique gameplay twist in which the big evil, in this game known as the Presence, tries to hunt us down. And a minor warning, like Lovecraft's Untold stories, Song of Horror can be very harsh and higher difficulties, since the gameplay centers around the use of permadeath. This means if you die you can lose one of your characters for the whole playthrough. But the good thing is a lot of these permadeaths are entirely avoidable if you proceed carefully and thoughtfully. And thanks to that, I have to say, Song of Horror really got under my skin, and just like the Presence, did haunt the dark corners of my mind. But don't worry, the next game on this list is a slower, spook-filled adventure, Murdered Sole Suspect. In this game we play as a down-on-our-luck detective who is on the tail of a serial killer, only to find out that diving from the top of a building on solid concrete isn't the smartest life choice. So we respawn as a ghost detective and have to solve our own murder case before the Reaper comes knocking. Murdered Sole Suspect is a slow burn adventure game with great atmosphere and a clever plot, and some well-written characters. On top of the solid moving story, walking around as a ghost leads to some clever and entertaining investigation gameplay mechanics, which add to the detective feel of the game. While we learn more about the murder and explore the kinda open world of eerie fog-ridden Salem, we get more and more drawn into the spooky world of Murdered Soul Suspect. On the downside, and due to the lack of action, the gameplay is kinda not really challenging. But you can also say it's not overly complicated. If you go in with the right mindset, have a few hours to spend around Halloween, and if anything I said sounds interesting to you, then I highly recommend you give this game a chance. You may be very pleasantly surprised. And if you need some light-hearted spooks around Halloween, or searching for a fun beat 'em up to play with your friends, check out Zombie Vikings. While all Zoink games have a supernatural twist, I think for this list and Halloween we have to talk about the Undead Norsemen. This game takes a unique twist on Viking mythology. After Loki steals Odin's only good eye and takes off, we are brought back to life and tasked to hunt him down. In a surprisingly fun and well written story. I didn't expect that from a co-op beat 'em up game. I was surprised how well made, wacky and hilarious some of these cutscenes were. Overall, Zombie Vikings is a fun beat 'em up that has some excellent moments of humor with unique playable characters and a good level of difficulty. While the single player alone is good, the multiplayer is where Zombie Vikings truly shines. And if a 3D zombie adventure from the original Xbox era and the only game that used the OG Halo engine is more your thing, then check out Stubbs The Zombie. As a decaying, lovable, homicidal and brain-dead salesman, we come back to life in a retro future town to find out how we ended up as a zombie. By eating brains, farting and throwing our intels around. Yes, Stubbs goes all in on the zombie gameplay and lets us have some unapologetic fun. Stubbs the Zombie is one of those games that you can pick up and play, have a good time and be done with it in around 6 hours of playtime. It's a simple and silly adventure with somewhat dated gameplay, but I argue what is more fun than building your own army of zombies? The right answer is taking said army down. One bullet at a time. In Zombie Army Trilogy. This game combines two of my favorite things in gaming, sniping and zombies, and creates one of the most fun multiplayer madnesses that ever existed. This slow-mo X-ray bullet cam adrenaline pumping zombie killing fest is the light-hearted multiplayer session you've been searching for to play around Halloween. The polished sniper elite gameplay works surprisingly well against the undead hordes, and the gloomy and eerie atmosphere of the hellscape that is war-ridden World War II Europe does wonders as a unique backdrop for our zombie slaying adventures. And with one of the most powerful kicks in gaming, Zombie Army Trilogy is the perfect game to play with your dudes around Halloween. And if you don't have a dojo full of video game loving friends, worry not. This list got you covered with some virtual buddies in Crossing Souls. As a group of high school friends, we have to save our hometown from a government conspiracy, otherworldly beings and all kinds of supernatural occurrences in Crossing Souls. And it's common knowledge with all high school friend groups that every member of our team has to bring a unique ability to the table. So in this game it's mandatory for us to switch between our virtual buddies on the fly to take full advantage of their skills in battle and to solve puzzles around town. While most of the enemies are easy to deal with, some of the bosses actually take patience and skill. The gameplay switches between classic beat 'em up, bullet hell and platforming, and the synthwave soundtrack is pushing the retro vibes even further. And Crossing Souls manages to blend this all together into one cohesive game. While the story of high school friends fighting a supernatural government conspiracy sounds strangely familiar, the game does enough differently and feels like its own unique Saturday morning cartoon version of the well-known Netflix series. Next up, let's talk about a bloody good PS4 exclusive that lurked in the shadows for way too long. Shadow of the Beast. This game is only available on PS4 and one of the best side-scrolling beat-em-ups out there. In Shadow of the Beast, we switch sides and play as one of the evil goons. As we're unleashed upon a village, we realize while striking down the last resistance that murdering innocent civilians and kidnapping their babies might not be the best strategy to win the Nobel Peace Prize. So we are off onto the bloody road for revenge by slaying our former oppressors in a surprisingly great hack and slash game. In between fights we do some light-hearted jump and run activities to free our minds for the next killing spree. And the combat has a fair amount of depth, and with the number of secrets to find and unlock, the replay value for Shadow of the Beast is really high. I've enjoyed going back into the levels and getting better at the combat as I discover more. Shadow of the Beast is based on an old school Amiga game which I never played, but you can unlock the original game, and getting two games in one always gives me this fuzzy warm nostalgia feel I had when opening my presents on Christmas. It's like Santa unloaded his big package, or in terms of our next game, Dead Rising 4, Frank's big package. Dead Rising is one of the few franchises that really has something unique going for it in every entry, so I highly recommend you check out the complete series. But today we are talking about the most underrated game in this series, the Big Package. While it's a bit early to celebrate Christmas, the town of Willamette has an undead problem that needs immediate attention, and there is only one man that can solve it. Frank West. Washed up, wisecracking Frank West. And in best Dead Rising fashion, Frank is back by creating and crafting insanely unique weapons and vehicles beyond our wildest zombie apocalypse imaginations. And the whole town is our playground. Only a few games manage to capture the feel of a grim world overrun by zombies and being a lighthearted slaughterfest at the same time, quite like Dead Rising does. Despite some changes from the previous entries, I still had an absolute blast with Dead Rising 4. Frank's Big Package is a blood-soaked holiday adventure which is perfectly suited to play around Halloween or Christmas. And can we all take a second and appreciate video games that have a pun in the title? You know you're going to have a good time when the title speaks for itself. This can't be said for the final place on this list. Nevertheless, The Surge 2 more than deserves the first place on this list. It's one of my favorite Souls-like games that even manages to surpass the much-loved Dark Souls gameplay, but more on that in a minute. In The Surge 2, we play as a nameless hero in a cyberpunk future, fighting religious zealots, bandits and private military goons in a city under lockdown. And thanks to our exosuit, we become a military-grade killing machine. But the combat system is where this game really shines. It's fun and simple, but has plenty of depth with a large set of weapon types that we can upgrade with loose body parts. These parts can be acquired by targeting different body parts of our enemies. It's like a dismemberment body part simulator. It's very Souls-like, but it also tries to maintain its own identity by giving us a different sort of combat mechanic. And I have to be honest and say I found this mechanic a lot more fun and rewarding than the one in Dark Souls. Plus, The Surge 2 has an interesting atmosphere and story with a world at the brink of its destruction, and combined with its challenging gameplay, it's perfectly fitted for this spooky season. So I would strongly recommend picking it up if you're looking for something to fill the Dark Souls gap in your life. That's it, my dudes. These are my favorite PS4 hidden gems to play around Halloween. But what are your favorite spooky PlayStation 4 games? Which game is a mandatory play around every spooky season? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, kick the like button, sharing is caring, and subscribe. But most importantly, have a great day and get the kick out of gaming.
We need cover. That hotel looks good.
3 stars at best.
You ever stop clowning?